The market on Station 9 was always noisy. Machines hummed, aliens shouted, and traders argued about prices. People walked fast, carrying tools, wires, or bags of strange fruit. But no one noticed the small figure sitting quietly near the trash pile. She was thin, too thin. Her body looked more like bones than flesh. Torn pieces of cloth were wrapped around her like old rags. Her hair was matted, her skin covered in dust, and her eyes stayed down, never meeting anyone's gaze. She didn't beg. She didn't speak. She just sat there. The trash pile behind her stank of rotting food, broken electronics, and oil. Most aliens avoided that corner because of the smell, but she didn't care. This was her place. This was where she belonged. A pair of rich alien boys passed by. One of them laughed and threw a metal can at her. It hit her shoulder and rolled away. She didn't flinch. She was used to it. The other boy said, "That thing's not alive anymore, just a shadow." They laughed and walked away. But then, someone stopped. Heavy boots clicked on the metal floor. A man stood still. His eyes weren't cold like the others. They were human eyes, tired but kind. He wore a dirty mechanic's uniform and his hands were rough from work. He looked at her. She didn't look up. He crouched down. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. She hugged her knees tighter. She whispered, "Go away." The human didn't move. He looked around. Everyone else ignored them. "I can get you something to eat," he said. "No," she said quickly. "Don't waste food on me." He reached into his bag and pulled out a protein bar. He placed it beside her. "You don't have to eat it now," he said, "but it's yours." She stared at the food but didn't touch it. She had learned not to trust kindness. "Why are you still here?" she asked him quietly. "Because you look like you've been alone too long," he replied. Her lips trembled. She hadn't spoken to anyone in days. She didn't even remember how many nights she had slept beside the garbage. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I'm dirty. I'm useless. Shameful. I belong here." He frowned. "Who told you that?" "Everyone." The human looked at her with something strange in his eyes. Not pity, not disgust. Just care. "My name is Jace," he said. "I'm a mechanic. I fix broken things." She blinked. So maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just waiting to be repaired." She didn't know what to say. No one had ever said something like that before. She wanted to believe him, but the chains on her heart were too heavy. Suddenly, a group of alien guards came down the lane. One of them spotted her. "Hey, she's still here? Didn't we tell her to stay off the platform?" The guards walked toward her. She stood up quickly, ready to run, but her legs shook. Jay stepped in front of her. "She's with me," he said. The guard frowned. "She's a stray. She has no ID, no name. She's garbage." "No one's garbage," Jace said calmly. "I'll take responsibility." The guards looked at each other, then grunted. "Fine. She's your problem now." When they left, the girl looked up at him, confused. "Why did you do that?" Jace shrugged. "Because someone needed to." She shook her head. "You'll regret this." He smiled gently. "Maybe. But not today." She hesitated for a long time. Then slowly, her shaking hand reached down and picked up the protein bar. She took one bite, and her eyes filled with tears. "You're the first person who gave me food without asking for something," she whispered. He looked her in the eyes. "You don't owe me anything." Her voice cracked. "Then, who am I now?" He stood up and held out his hand. "You're someone who deserves better than a trash pile," he said. She stared at his hand. Her own hands were dirty, scarred, trembling. But after a long pause, she took it. The girl sat on a metal bench inside Jace's workshop. Her hands were still shaking, even though the room was warm and quiet. Tools hung on the walls. Old machines lined the corners. It smelled like oil and sparks, but it was better than the trash heap. Much better. She didn't know what to do with her body. Sit still? Curl up? Run away? She had never been inside a room without fear. Jace didn't push her. He just walked around the workshop checking parts and wiping his hands. He didn't ask questions. He didn't stare. That made her feel strange. He walked past her once and her body tensed. He noticed. "You're safe here," he said gently. Her voice came out small. "Don't touch me." Jace stopped. He wasn't even close. "I wasn't going to." She looked down again. "Even if you do, I wouldn't fight. I'm used to it." Jace blinked. Then he slowly crouched down, not near her, just close enough to talk at eye level. "You think I brought you here to hurt you? Isn't that what humans do?" she whispered. "Take what they want?" His face didn't twist in anger. It didn't change at all. He just said, "I didn't bring you here for that. I brought you here because you looked like you'd forgotten what kindness feels like." Her chest tightened. Kindness? That word was like a ghost. She had stopped believing in it long ago. He stood up and walked to a shelf. He pulled down a folded cloth, a clean blanket. He came back slowly. "You look cold," he said, holding it out. She didn't move. "It's not a trick," he said. "I'm not worth a blanket," she said. Her voice cracked. "I'm not worth anything." Jace sighed. "You're worth this blanket. You're worth more than you think." She didn't take it. But when he set it beside her and walked away, her fingers curled around the edge. She pulled it to her chest, quietly, like it was a crime. Jace made tea, just hot water and herbs. He handed her a metal cup, warm and steaming. She touched it with both hands and stared at the rising mist. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked. He leaned on the workbench. "Because someone helped me once. When I thought I was nothing." She looked up. "But you're human. You have value." He chuckled sadly. "Not back then. I was just a broken fighter. Lost my team. Lost my leg. Wanted to stop breathing." Her eyes widened. "You wanted to die?" He nodded. "But someone pulled me out of that dark place. Not with money, not with magic, just kindness." The room fell quiet. The girl sipped her tea. She whispered, "I don't have a name." Jace tilted his head. "Do you want one?" She looked unsure. "I don't know." He smiled. "That's okay. No rush." She stared at him. "You're strange." "Why?" "You treat me like I'm not broken." "Because I don't see someone broken," he said softly. "I see someone strong, still standing, still breathing, even after everything." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked away fast, biting her lip. He didn't say anything. He just went back to his tools and started working again, letting her sit in silence. Minutes passed. Then she said the words, the ones that had haunted her for so long. "I was sold." His hand stopped turning the wrench. She continued. "Sold again, then passed around. They told me I was shameful, that I was good, for nothing but use." She couldn't look at him. Her voice trembled. "I believe them." He didn't speak. He just listened. "I don't even know what planet I'm from," she said. "They took my name, my clothes, my hope." And then the final words came like a knife from her soul. "Don't touch me. I'll break." Jace put down the tool. He walked over slowly, not to touch her, but to sit on the floor across from her. He looked up at her and said, "You've already survived worse than most beings ever will. That doesn't make you dirty. That makes you powerful." She stared at him. "You're not what they did to you," he said. Her breath caught. "You're who you choose to be next." And in that quiet, warm workshop, wrapped in a stolen blanket, holding a simple cup of tea, she whispered for the first time, "I want to be someone else." Morning light came through the small glass panel above the workshop. It was a soft golden color, warm and calm. The girl woke up wrapped in the same blanket Jace had given her. She had curled up in a corner of the room beside a pile of old cushions. It wasn't a bed, but it was the safest place she had ever slept. Jace was already awake, working on a floating generator. Sparks flew now and then, but he didn't make much noise. He glanced at her, gave a small nod, and returned to his work. She sat up slowly, hugging the blanket tightly. He didn't say good morning. He didn't ask her questions, he just made breakfast, simple bread, soft fruit, and a mug of something warm, and left the plate on the table near her. Then he turned his back again, letting her choose. She waited a few minutes, testing him, but he didn't look back. She slowly came to the table. She sat, she ate, and for the first time in years, no one watched her like an object. After she finished, she stared at her hands. They were rough, cracked, with dirt deep in the lines. Her nails were chipped. Her arms were scarred. Jace finally spoke. "You want to clean up?" She looked at him. "Why?" "You don't have to. Just thought it might feel nice." He led her to the back, where there was a sink with warm water and a mirror. He gave her a soft bar of soap and stepped outside, leaving her alone. She stared into the mirror. The girl in the reflection looked like a ghost. Her face was thin, eyes hollow, hair wild. She barely recognized herself. She turned on the water and let it run over her fingers. It felt strange, like something forgotten. Then she slowly, carefully washed her face. Her hands, her arms. As the dirt fell away, old marks came into view, burns, bruises, branded symbols. She paused. She touched one burn above her shoulder. She remembered the cage. She remembered the fire. She closed her eyes, then opened them again, and kept washing. When she stepped out, Jace didn't say anything, but he noticed. Her face looked brighter, her posture less afraid. She had tied her hair back with a string of wire. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. "I can help," she said quietly. He raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "Your machines. You fix things, right?" "I used to clean parts." Jace smiled a little. "I could use the help." He handed her a small metal board and a cleaning cloth. "Start with this." She sat on the floor and got to work. Her hands shook at first, but she focused. Hard. She wiped every piece like it was gold. Jace watched from the corner. She didn't know, but he was amazed. Most people wouldn't care about such a small job, but she treated it with deep care, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Hours passed. The shop was quiet. Then Jace asked, "Do you want a name?" She looked up, confused. "A name? You said you don't have one." "I don't," she said softly. "You can choose one, or I can help." She was silent for a long time. Then, she whispered, "I'm afraid." "Of what?" "That if I have a name and I lose it again, it'll hurt more." Jace nodded slowly. "That makes sense. But maybe having a name isn't about what people take. Maybe it's about what you give to yourself." She looked at him. He continued, "You don't have to choose now, but when you're ready, your name will be waiting." She didn't answer, but her eyes softened. A small warmth stirred in her chest, like a candle flickering in the dark. Later that evening, she sat beside the workbench, watching Jace weld wires. "Why do you trust me?" she asked. Jace didn't look away from his work. "Because I saw your eyes. I saw someone fighting to live. I trust that." She said nothing, but she stayed close. And when the stars rose above Station 9 that night, the girl with no name didn't cry herself to sleep. She just whispered one quiet sentence into the blanket. "Maybe I can become someone." The workshop. Lights dimmed as the solar power dropped. Outside, the stars blinked in the black sky, and the wind hummed through the station's broken vents. Most shops were closed. The noise was gone. But inside Jace's repair shop, a quiet heartbeat remained. She was lying on a soft mat now, something Jace had fixed from spare cushions. It wasn't a real bed, but it was warm, and for her, it was heaven. But sleep didn't come. The blanket was pulled tight around her, but she kept staring at the ceiling. Her heart thumped in her chest like it was trying to escape. Her fingers dug into the cloth and her breath came faster. She had felt this before. Peace. And that scared her more than pain ever did. Jace was working at the far end of the shop. He was quiet, as always, fixing a circuit board under a lamp. He hadn't asked her anything all day, hadn't touched her, hadn't judged her. That made it worse. She sat up suddenly, arms tight around her chest. Her throat ached. Her body trembled. She didn't want to cry. Not here. Not where someone could hear, but it came anyway. Soft, broken sobs escaped her mouth, like pieces of a dam falling apart. She pressed her hand over her lips, trying to stay quiet. But Jace noticed. He didn't say a word. He didn't come close. He just walked to the workbench, grabbed a clean cloth, and gently placed it beside her on the ground. Then he went back to his tools. She stared at the cloth and wept harder. She cried for the time they shaved her head like a pet. She cried for the time she was told her body was only useful when silent. She cried for every time she had begged for food, only to be kicked away. She cried for the child she had once been, bright-eyed, curious, before the world ruined her. When the tears slowed, she clutched the cloth in her hands like a lifeline. Jace didn't ask her why, didn't tell her to stop, and that somehow made her feel seen. Later that night, Jace made a small fire in the heating chamber. He sat near it and tapped the space beside him. She hesitated, then slowly she joined him. The fire cracked softly. He passed her a tin cup with warm liquid. "Just hot water," he said. "Good for calming nerves." She took it. "Why? Do you always care?" He looked into the fire. "Because caring is all I have left." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He took a long breath. "I lost someone once, a sister. She was younger, small like you. She disappeared during a raid on our ship. I never found her." Silence. "I searched every system I could, but they said, she's probably been sold, off, or worse." His jaw clenched. "I couldn't save her." Her voice came out like a whisper. "I'm sorry." Jace shook his head. "You're not her, but when I saw you, sitting in the dirt, I thought, what if someone had helped her like this? Maybe she'd still be alive." The girl stared into the fire, her hands warming around the cup. "I think I understand now," she said. "Understand what?" "What safe feels like." He turned to her. "I thought safety was a place, a cage without beatings, a roof over your head, but it's not. It's a person who doesn't look at you like you're broken." Jace said nothing, just nodded. She took another sip, then softly asked, "Can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Only if you want to," she swallowed. Her voice shook. "One of them used to say I was too ugly to sell, so they used me for practice." Jace's face didn't change, but his hands slowly curled into fists. "I thought if I made myself smaller, quieter, dirtier, maybe they'd forget I existed." He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deep. "You're not forgotten," he said firmly. She stared at him, surprised. "You're not shameful. You're not useless." She blinked fast. "You're here. You survived. And that makes you stronger than anyone who ever tried to break you." For a while they sat in silence, and when the fire grew dim, she rested her head on her folded arms. Not on the floor, not in the trash, but next to someone who saw her pain and didn't walk away. She fell asleep that night without fear, and for the first time her dreams were quiet. It had been 5 days since she stepped into Jace's world. She now helped around the shop, cleaning tools, organizing small parts, and even handing him wrenches while he repaired engines. She moved like someone afraid to take up space, but she moved. And that was something. Jace never rushed her, never made her speak more than she wanted. But every time she brought him a tool without being asked, or cleaned a piece of metal until it shined, he'd give her a nod. A simple, silent, "Well done." That nod meant more than 1,000 praises. But healing wasn't a straight line. One afternoon, while cleaning the top shelf, she reached up, too high. The edge of her shirt lifted, just a little, enough for the old scar on her back to show. Jace looked up at the same time. Their eyes met. She froze. Then panic flashed through her like lightning. She dropped the cloth and backed away, grabbing the hem of her shirt and yanking it down. I didn't mean to. Jace stood up, calm and slow. "It's okay." "No, it's not," she said, her voice shaking. "You saw it." "I did," he said quietly. She turned toward the door like she was ready to run. "Please don't leave," Jace said, taking a step forward, "but not too close. You don't have to hide. Not here." Her chest heaved, her hands clenched into fists. "That scar, it means I belong to someone. Like property." "I figured," Jace said softly. "But it doesn't mean you still do." Tears welled in her eyes. "You don't get it. That mark, they called it a use stamp. It means I'm dirty. Used. Not fit for anything, but I've seen soldiers with worse marks," he interrupted. "Marks they earned in war. They wore them with pride, because they lived." She blinked. "You survived hell," he said. "That's not a shame mark, that's a survival one. But it hurts to even look at it." "Then let it hurt," Jace said. "Let it burn, and then let it fade." She didn't run, but she didn't speak for a long time either. Later that night, she sat beside the heating coil with a mirror in her hands. She turned slightly and looked at her back. The mark was still there, burned into her skin like a cruel signature. But now, she saw something else. She saw the healed skin around it. She saw the muscles that had grown back stronger. She saw the fact that she was still standing. She touched it gently and whispered, "You don't own me anymore." Behind her, Jace quietly placed something on the table. A small strip of cloth. She turned. "What's this?" "A back wrap. For when the pain flares up." She stared at it, then at him. "You thought of this. For me. You're part of this place now," he said. "I look out for what's mine." She hesitated. "I'm yours?" He smiled gently. "You're someone under my roof. That counts." Her hands shook slightly as she picked up the wrap. "Thank you." He nodded. "You'll never have to show that scar again if you don't want to." She looked down, then whispered, "Maybe one day I'll show it proudly, not because of what it means, but because I made it out." Jace looked at her for a long moment. "That day will come." The fire flickered, casting warm shadows across the shop. She stood taller that evening, walking back to her mat with steady feet. The scar was still there, but now, it wasn't in charge anymore. The nights on Station 9 were always quiet, but this one felt different. She stood on the roof of Jace's workshop, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, eyes lifted to the sky. For the first time, she wasn't looking down in shame. She was looking up. The stars were bright tonight, tiny specks scattered across the black. But to her, they looked like hope. "I've never seen them this way before," she whispered. Jace, standing beside her, looked, confused. "You've never looked at stars?" She shook her head. "Not really. I always thought they belonged to people with ships, people with names, people who mattered." Jace smiled softly. "They belong to anyone who dares to dream." She turned to him. "Then maybe they belong to me now." And just like that, her heart reached somewhere it had never gone before. Each day after that, she woke up early and went to work with quiet energy. She learned how to clean engine filters, organize spare parts, and even rewire small devices. Her hands, once weak from hunger, now moved with purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was learning, becoming. Jace noticed the change, the way she stood straighter, the way her eyes sometimes lit up when she fixed something right. He never praised her too loudly, but his small nods, his slight smiles, meant everything. One afternoon, he gave her a test. He laid out a broken communication chip and said, "Can you figure it out?" She looked nervous but nodded. For the next 2 hours, she worked in silence. Sweat ran down her brow. Her hands trembled more than once, but she kept going. When she finally handed it back, he plugged it into the scanner. The light turned green, fully repaired. She stared, stunned. I fixed it?" Jace smiled. "You did." Her chest swelled. She had never been good at anything. No one had ever told her she had worth. But now, her hands had created something. Fixed something. She felt like she could breathe deeper. That night, Jace made a small celebration. Nothing big, just some warm stew, 2 old tin cups, and a piece of sweetbread he'd traded for. As they ate, he raised his cup. "To the best apprentice I've ever had." She laughed softly. The sound surprised both of them. "I'm your only apprentice," she teased. "Still counts," he said. That night, for the first time, she laughed again. And it didn't hurt. A few days later, she sat alone, writing on a small slate board Jace had given her. She wasn't drawing pictures. She was trying names, different ones, sounding them out. She erased many. But one name. She paused on Lyra. She traced it again. Lyra. It felt soft, safe, like a name you whispered under starlight. When Jace passed by, she hesitated, then held up the board. He read the word. "You chose a name?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Lyra," he said. "It suits you." Her smile was small but real. "I always wanted to be something more," she whispered. "Someone with a story." "You already are," Jace said. "You just didn't know it yet." Later that night, Lyra stood on the roof again. The stars welcomed her like old friends. She stretched out her arms and whispered, "One day, I'll go out there. I'll build my own ship, fly between the stars, and I won't be afraid." Jace stood in the doorway below, watching her. She didn't see him, but he saw her, and in that moment, he knew. She wasn't just healing. She was becoming. The bell above the shop door rang, a loud, sharp chime. Lyra froze. She was cleaning a datapad near the front desk. Her hands paused, her eyes narrowed. Something felt wrong. Jace looked up from his workbench. "Stay behind me," he said softly, already moving forward. 2 tall figures entered. They wore long cloaks with metal badges on their chests, trade inspectors from the outer rings. But Lyra's eyes locked on the third person behind them, a short, thick alien with yellow eyes and sharp teeth, her old owner. Her knees weakened. The scar on her back pulsed like it had come alive. "That's her," the alien growled. "My lost property. I've come to take her back." Jace stepped forward before Lyra could move. "She's not your property," he said, voice firm. "She's marked," the alien barked, pointing at Lyra. "That stamp is binding. By trade law, she belongs to me." "No," Jace said. "That mark doesn't decide who she is. She does." The inspector glanced at Lyra. "Is this true? Did he mark you?" Lyra's voice was quiet but steady. "Yes, he did." The alien smirked. "But he doesn't own me," she added, louder now. "Not anymore." The room fell silent. The alien's grin dropped. "You dare reject my claim?" "I dare," she said, stepping forward, shoulders straight. "Because I'm not a thing, I have a name now. My name is Lyra." Jace's eyes widened, proud. "She speaks boldly," the inspector said. "She speaks freely," Jace corrected. Because she's safe here, the inspectors whispered among themselves. Finally, the leader said, if she declares herself free, and you, human, offer her shelter, then by revised law, she is no longer trade property. The alien shouted, in protest, but it was too late. She belongs to herself now, the inspector said. Lyra watched the alien storm out. Her body trembled, not from fear but from the weight of everything she had just stood against. The door shut behind them, and she collapsed, not from weakness, but from release. Tears spilled from her eyes, not because she was afraid, because she was free. Jace rushed to her, catching her before she hit the floor. She sobbed into his chest and he wrapped his arms around her, tight, strong, unshaking. You did it, he whispered. I thought I'd break, she cried. You didn't. You stood tall. I was so scared, but you stood anyway. She looked up at him, face wet with tears. You held me like I mattered when no one else did. You've always mattered, Lyra, Jace said. I just saw it before you did. Her arms wrapped around him tight. Not because she needed saving anymore, but because she had someone who would never let her be small again. That night, they sat by the fire like always. But this time, Lyra wasn't curled up in a corner. She sat beside Jace, shoulder to shoulder, hands warm around her mug. I never thought someone could love something broken, she whispered. Jace looked at her. You're not broken. You were hurt. There's a difference. She stared into the flames. I think I want to stay here, learn more, maybe build things that help others, like you helped me. He nodded. You've got hands for it, and a heart. She smiled, then laughed. The sound was different now. Whole, light. He looked at her with something soft in his eyes, not as a lost girl, not as a burden, but as someone precious. Outside, the stars blinked gently. Once she had thought they were too far away. Now, they felt just within reach. She was no longer the girl from the trash. She was Lyra, named, chosen, free, and in the arms of a human who saw her worth. She finally believed she was worthy too.